Commander Hansu stood at the edge of the colony's eastern ridge, watching the twin suns set over the valley. The orange light caught her short black hair as she took a deep breath of the cool evening air. 5 years living on this remote world had not erased her military posture or the watchful look in her eyes. Once she had been Earth's most decorated fighter pilot. Now, she was just another refugee on Nuevo Terra, a colony so far from Earth that news arrived months late. Han preferred it that way. After the war and the disbanding of Earth's Space Force, she had chosen isolation over politics. The small house she built herself sat behind her, overlooking the colony's main settlement. Han turned to head inside when her comm unit beeped. An emergency signal she hadn't heard in years. "This is Director Park. All colony leadership report to Central Command immediately." The voice was calm, but tight with tension. Han frowned. As the colony's unofficial defense advisor, she was technically part of leadership, though she rarely attended meetings. Something serious must have happened. 30 minutes later, Han stood in the colony's command center as Director Park played the intercepted message. The holographic display showed a massive fleet of crystalline ships, the unmistakable signature of the Talon Armada. "They'll reach our system in 26 hours, Director Park said. "Their path leaves no doubt they're heading directly for us." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what Talon arrival meant. The aliens were methodical in their planetary cleansings, leaving nothing behind but stripped resources and dead worlds. "What about our defense ships?" Han asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Sabotaged," Captain Lee replied, his face grim. "All 5 cruisers have had their drive cores damaged, and our communications array was destroyed 3 hours ago. We have no way to call for help." Han walked to the window, looking out at the colony where 12,000 people lived, worked, and hoped for a future. "How quickly can we evacuate?" "We have enough short-range ships to get everyone to the moon base," Director Park answered. "But the Talon will find them there within days." "Unless we delay them," Han said quietly. The other leaders looked at her, waiting. "We need to buy time for a proper evacuation," Han continued. "The moon base has a long-range transmitter. If we can hold the Talon back even for a day, a distress call might reach the nearest outpost." "With what?" Captain Lee asked. "Our defense ships are crippled." A strange idea formed in Han's mind. There might be something. An hour later, Han stood in the colony's museum hangar, staring at the gleaming black F-22 Raptor. The antique fighter jet from Earth's early 21st century had been her personal project for 3 years, locating parts, restoring systems, making it operational as a flying museum piece. Director Park looked at the jet with confusion. "This is your plan? An ancient atmospheric fighter?" "It's fully functional," Han said, running her hand along the sleek fuselage. "And the Talon won't expect it." "Because it's suicide," Captain Lee said bluntly. "That thing can't fly in space, and it has no shields or weapons that could damage a Talon ship." Han smiled slightly. "Then we'll have to make some modifications." Through the night, the colony's engineers worked with desperate efficiency. They fitted the F-22 with a makeshift shield generator salvaged from a cargo shuttle. The jet's weapon systems were upgraded with modern power cells. A thin layer of heat-resistant coating was applied to the exterior, and an emergency oxygen system installed in the cockpit. "It won't last long in space," the chief engineer told Han as dawn approached. "Maybe 30 minutes before the systems fail. The shields might take 1 or 2 hits." Han nodded. "That's all I need." As she climbed into the cockpit, Director Park approached. "This is crazy, Han. Even if you distract them, what can one fighter do against an armada?" Han secured her helmet. "Sometimes the unexpected is the only advantage you have." She looked at the colony beyond the hangar doors. "Get everyone to the evacuation ships. I'll give you as much time as I can." As the first sun rose over the horizon, Hansu taxied the ancient fighter to the runway. The F-22's engines roared to life, a sound not heard on this world before. She pushed the throttle forward, feeling the familiar G-forces press her into the seat as the jet accelerated. The Raptor lifted off, climbing higher and faster than it had been designed for. Han felt the vibrations through the stick as the fighter pushed its limits. Above her, the sky darkened from blue to black, and stars became visible. In the distance, she could already see the first glint of crystalline ships entering the system. The Talon Armada had arrived. The stars brightened as Han Su pushed the F-22 beyond the planet's atmosphere. Her ancient fighter shuddered against the vacuum of space, systems straining under conditions it was never designed to handle. The emergency shield flickered around the jet, a thin blue bubble barely visible against the blackness. Ahead of her, the Talon Armada spread across the void like shimmering glass shards catching light. Hundreds of crystalline ships moved in perfect formation, their surfaces reflecting nearby starlight. The smallest was 50 times larger than her tiny jet. "This is madness," Han whispered to herself, hands steady on the controls despite the odds. The retrofitted heads-up display showed evacuation ships launching from the colony below, carrying civilians toward the moon base. The comms crackled. "Commander Su, evacuation is at 20%. We need at least 3 hours to complete." Director Park's voice was strained. "I'll give you those hours," Han replied, then cut the transmission. She pushed the throttle forward, aiming directly at the Talon formation. The old jet's engines roared, not with the silent efficiency of modern spacecraft, but with raw mechanical power. Fuel burned hot and bright behind her, leaving a trail no space vessel would ever produce. On the Talon command ship, Fleet Commander Rill observed the approaching object with confusion. The sensor data made no sense. "Analysis?" he demanded of his subordinates. "Unknown craft approaching," the response came. "Primitive propulsion, minimal shielding, not matching any known design." Rill's crystalline features shifted in what passed for a frown among his kind. "A single defender, scan for energy signatures. Readings indicate combustion-based propulsion, primitive projectile weapons. No energy weapons detected." This was unprecedented. The Talon's conquest of 17 systems had taught them that resistance always came in the form of modern defense fleets, or at least planetary shield systems. Never had they encountered what appeared to be an antique. "Dispatch 2 scout ships to eliminate it," Rill ordered dismissively. "Continue approach to the colony." Han saw the 2 smaller Talon vessels break formation and accelerate toward her. Their sleek angular forms gleamed as they closed the distance with impossible grace. Each was armed with energy weapons that could vaporize her fighter with a single hit. She had one advantage: they didn't know what to make of her. As the first scout ship fired, Han did something no space pilot would ever attempt. She cut her engines completely, letting momentum carry her forward while simultaneously firing the F-22's maneuvering thrusters in a pattern that sent the jet into a wild spin. The energy beam passed harmlessly through empty space where she should have been. Han reignited the engines at the exact moment her spin brought the jet's nose toward the scout ship. She squeezed the trigger, sending a burst of retrofitted projectiles toward the crystalline vessel. The Talon ship, expecting energy weapons it could deflect, made no evasive maneuver. The projectiles struck its hull, cracking the crystalline surface. The scout ship shuddered, then fragmented into glittering pieces as secondary explosions tore through its systems. "One down," Han muttered, sweat beading on her forehead as she pulled the fighter into a sharp dive. The second scout ship reacted differently, firing continuous beams while pursuing her. Han pushed the F-22 back toward the planet, using gravity to accelerate beyond what the jet's engines could manage alone. The Talon ship followed, its AI calculating the most efficient pursuit course. But the AI had never encountered Earth atmospheric combat tactics. Han plunged into the upper atmosphere, the shield around her jet glowing red with friction. Behind her, the Talon ship adjusted its approach to match her trajectory perfectly. "Too perfect," Han said with a tight smile, then did what no sensible pilot would do. She cut her engines again and deployed the F-22's air brakes. In space, this would have been merely a change of velocity. In the thin upper atmosphere, it created massive drag. The F-22 slowed dramatically while the pursuing Talon ship, unprepared for atmospheric physics, overshot her position. Han fired again as the enemy passed directly overhead. Her shot struck the ship's propulsion system, sending it into an uncontrolled spiral toward the planet's surface. It exploded in a brilliant flash of light before hitting the ground. On the command ship, Fleet Commander Reel watched the impossible unfold on his displays. 2 scout ships destroyed by a primitive craft using tactics his analysts couldn't predict. "Hold the fleet's advance," he ordered, standing from his command chair. "Redirect all scout ships to eliminate this threat." His second-in-command's features shifted in surprise. "Commander, delaying the invasion for one primitive fighter is necessary," Reel interrupted. "I will not proceed until we understand this anomaly. The human pilot is using techniques our combat algorithms cannot predict. This represents an unknown variable." As 20 more scout ships broke formation and moved toward her position, Han received another transmission from the colony. "Commander Sue, evacuation now at 40%. Whatever you're doing up there, keep doing it. The Talon fleet has stopped advancing." Han checked her systems, shield strength fading, fuel at 60%, ammunition limited. She took a deep breath and turned the fighter to face the approaching ships. "Let's show them what a human pilot can do," she whispered, pushing the throttle forward once more. The 20 Talon scout ships spread out in a perfect half-sphere formation as they closed in on Han's F-22. Their crystalline hulls caught the sunlight, creating a dazzling display that might have been beautiful under different circumstances. Han's comm unit crackled to life. "Commander Sue, this is Jin from Colony Tech. We've accessed the old satellite network. We can see the Talon formations now." "Good timing," Han replied, eyeing her fuel gauge. "I could use some help. We've been studying their attack patterns. They're using predictive algorithms, very advanced but rigid. They expect logical responses based on efficient space combat." Han smiled. "Then let's be illogical." She pushed the fighter into a steep dive toward the planet, 5 scout ships following in perfect pursuit formation. Their energy beams sliced through the space around her, each shot calculated to intersect with her projected path. But Han wasn't flying by computer prediction. She was flying by feel, by the instincts developed through thousands of hours in atmospheric flight. The F-22 responded to her touch like an extension of her body. As she entered the upper atmosphere, she pulled the stick hard to the right while simultaneously firing a short burst from the left maneuvering thruster. The fighter entered a controlled tumble that no space pilot would attempt, a maneuver that used air resistance rather than fighting it. "They're confused," Jin reported, watching from the satellite feed. "Their targeting systems are recalculating." The Talon ships adjusted their formation, spreading wider to ensure no escape. 2 fired simultaneously from opposite directions, certain their target couldn't evade both shots. Han punched the throttle and pulled up sharply. The F-22 groaned under the G-forces as it shot between the energy beams in a move that defied their predictive models. She looped back and fired at the nearest ship, striking its propulsion system. The crystalline vessel spun out of control, colliding with another scout ship. Both exploded in a shower of glittering debris. 3 down, 17 to go, Han muttered, checking her systems. The shield generator was overheating, power levels dropping. A warning light indicated stress fractures forming along the left wing. "Commander, there's a storm system forming over the eastern continent." Jin's voice came through. "Massive electromagnetic activity." "Perfect," Han replied. She banked the fighter toward the continent, staying in the atmosphere where her maneuverability advantage was strongest. The pursuing Talon ships adapted their formation again, trying to herd her toward open space. Han descended further, skimming just above a bank of thick clouds. As 3 scouts closed in from above, she suddenly cut power and dropped into the cloud cover. Inside the dense clouds, the Talon sensors struggled to maintain a lock. Han relied on instinct and basic instruments, pulling the fighter through the clouds in an erratic path no algorithm could predict. When she emerged from the bottom of the cloud bank, she immediately pulled into a tight loop coming up behind one of the confused scouts. A burst of fire from her weapons struck the ship's vulnerable underside, shattering its crystal structure. "Commander, your shield is failing," Jin warned. Han could see it, the blue energy field flickering around her craft. A glancing hit from a Talon weapon had damaged the generator. Another direct hit would destroy her. "Evacuation status?" she asked, voice steady despite the sweat soaking her flight suit. 65% complete. Still need another hour?" Han looked toward the horizon where dark swirling clouds marked the edge of the electromagnetic storm belt. Normally, pilots avoided this area at all costs. Unpredictable currents, lightning strikes powerful enough to disable any ship, and magnetic interference that rendered navigation systems useless. "The Talon are adapting to your patterns," Jin reported. "They're analyzing your maneuvers, becoming less predictable themselves." Han nodded to herself. She had expected this. Even the most rigid AI systems could learn eventually. A Talon energy beam grazed her right wing, melting part of the metal. The F-22 shuddered violently, threatening to spin out of control. Han fought the stick, using precise rudder inputs to stabilize the craft. "I'm heading for the storm belt," she announced. "That's suicide," Jin protested. "Even if your shields were at full strength, the Talon ships are more vulnerable to electromagnetic interference than this old jet." Han cut in. "Their systems are too delicate, too dependent on perfect communication between ships." She pushed the damaged fighter toward the massive storm front, the remaining Talon scouts following in tight formation. They were learning, becoming more cautious but still in pursuit. The edge of the storm loomed ahead, a wall of dark clouds lit from within by constant lightning. Han took a deep breath and plunged into the maelstrom. Immediately, the F-22's electronic systems began to flicker. The retrofitted shield generator failed completely. Static filled the comm channel. Behind her, the Talon scouts hesitated at the storm's edge. Two ventured in after her, their crystalline structures absorbing the electromagnetic energy until they began to glow from within. Moments later, both ships shattered as their delicate control systems overloaded. The remaining scouts stayed at the edge of the storm, unwilling to follow. Inside the storm, Han flew purely by instinct now, navigating the violent air currents with minimal instruments. Lightning flashed all around her, occasionally striking the fighter directly. The F-22's metal frame channeled the electricity away from vital systems, another unintended advantage of its ancient design. "Sometimes older is better," Han whispered, a smile crossing her face as she flew deeper into the heart of the storm, the pursuing Talon fleet temporarily thwarted by nature itself. The electromagnetic storm raged for 6 hours before beginning to dissipate. Han's F-22 emerged from the dark clouds, metal skin scorched and systems barely functioning. Half her instruments were dead, the shield generator completely fried, but the jet still flew, and that was all that mattered. In those 6 hours, word of her impossible stand had spread. The colony's evacuation ships, safely reaching the moon base, had broadcast the story of a single human pilot in an antique fighter, holding off an entire Talon armada. The long-range transmitter sent the message to nearby systems. "Commander Su." Jin's voice came through the static-filled comm channel. "Can you hear me?" "I'm here," Han replied, voice rough from exhaustion. "What's the situation?" "Evacuation complete. Everyone's safely at the moon base." There was a pause. "And we're getting responses from 3 nearby colonies. They're sending ships." Han smiled tiredly. "Tell them to hurry. I don't think this old bird has much fight left in her." She looked out across the planet's curve to where the main Talon fleet still waited. The scout ships she hadn't destroyed had rejoined the formation. From her position, the armada looked like a constellation of artificial stars, beautiful and deadly. Her radar, still partially functional, showed a new development. The Talon ships were repositioning, forming a protective sphere around one massive vessel nearly twice the size of the others. "They're protecting their flagship," Han murmured. "Fleet Commander must be getting nervous." On board that flagship, Fleet Commander Reel studied the scan data with growing frustration. The human pilot had survived the storm that had claimed 2 more of his scouts. This single primitive craft had delayed his cleansing operation by nearly a full planetary rotation. "The human colonies in nearby systems are dispatching ships," his second-in-command reported, "and we've detected transmissions suggesting Galactic Council observers may be en route." Rill's crystalline features hardened. Accelerate our timeline. Begin the approach to the colony immediately. We will deal with this nuisance directly. Han watched as the massive armada began moving toward the planet once more. She checked her weapons. 2 bursts remaining, not nearly enough to make a difference against so many ships. The F-22's fuel was critically low, and structural integrity warnings flashed across her remaining displays. Jin, I need information, Han said, mind racing. Everything you have on Talon flagship design. Sending what we have now, Jin replied. It's not much, just what our scanners can detect from this distance. Han studied the schematics that appeared on her cracked display screen. The Talon flagship, like all their vessels, was crystalline in structure, but with a complex lattice, design that reinforced its massive hull. Its power core sat at the center, protected by multiple layers of crystal plating. But something caught her eye, a resonance pattern in the crystal structure. The flagship's hull vibrated at a specific frequency, different from the smaller vessels. Jin, what's the resonance frequency of that crystal structure? Han asked. There was a pause as the technicians analyzed the data. Approximately 372.8 hertz. Why? Han smiled. Because this old fighter has something no modern ship has. Supersonic capabilities and mechanical turbofans that create a specific vibration pattern. She began adjusting her approach, calculating fuel consumption against distance. 1 chance was all she would have. Meanwhile, in a secure chamber at the Galactic Council's monitoring station, Ambassador Kim reviewed the incoming data from the Nuevo Terra system. A single human pilot in an antique atmospheric fighter is holding off a Talon armada, she asked incredulously. Her aide nodded. The pilot has destroyed 7 scout ships using tactics the Talon can't predict. The colony has been fully evacuated to their moon base. Ambassador Kim's expression hardened. The Council's non-intervention policy with the Talon has been a mistake. Prepare my ship. I want observers in that system immediately. Back in Nuevo Terra's orbit, Han approached the Tylon fleet from above, diving toward the massive flagship at the center of their formation. Scout ships moved to intercept, but Han wasn't aiming for them. All systems to maximum, she whispered, pushing the damaged fighter beyond its limits. Warning lights flashed across her console as metal stressed and engines overheated. She activated her last modification, a jury-rigged system that channeled power from the engines directly into the F-22's frame, causing the entire aircraft to vibrate at exactly 372.8 hertz. Jin, tell the evacuation ships to stay put. This might get rough. Han dove straight toward the flagship, weaving through energy beams as scout ships tried to stop her approach. The F-22 shuddered violently, threatening to tear itself apart as it maintained the precise resonance frequency. The Talon flagship grew larger in her canopy, its crystalline surface gleaming. Han could see energy weapons charging along its hull, preparing to vaporize her tiny craft. Time seemed to slow as Han locked onto her target, a specific junction in the crystal lattice where the resonance would be most devastating. She needed perfect timing, threading between the flagship's defenses to reach that exact spot. Here goes everything, Han whispered, pushing the fighter into a final desperate dive toward the heart of the Talon armada. Hansu's F-22 screamed toward the Talon flagship, vibrating at precisely 372.8 hertz. The ancient jet's metal frame groaned under the stress as pieces of the outer skin began to tear away. Warning indicators flashed across her remaining displays, but Han's eyes were fixed on her target. Fleet Commander Reel watched the approach with growing confusion. The primitive craft was on a collision course, but its trajectory made no tactical sense. It wasn't aiming for any weapon system or vulnerable point. Target all forward batteries on that craft, he ordered, his crystalline voice sharp with frustration. Energy beams lanced out from the flagship, but Han rolled and pitched the fighter through impossibly tight maneuvers, evading most shots. A glancing hit tore away part of her left wing, sending the F-22 into a spin that would have been fatal for a less skilled pilot. Han fought the controls, using the damage itself to adjust her approach. As she neared the flagship, she pushed the throttle to maximum and dumped her remaining fuel directly into the afterburners. The resulting exhaust created a superheated plume that interacted with the vibrating airframe, generating an interference pattern that matched the flagship's crystal resonance frequency perfectly. When the pattern hit the flagship's shield, something unexpected happened. Rather than being stopped, the vibrations passed through, amplified by the shield itself. The massive crystal structure of the flagship began to vibrate in sympathy. Inside the command center, Rill felt the deck tremble beneath him. Display screens cracked as the vibrations intensified. "What is happening?" he demanded. "The human craft is generating a resonance field," his science officer reported, voice tense. "It's destabilizing our crystal matrix." Rill moved to the main viewport, watching as the tiny fighter continued its approach. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something like respect for an enemy. "They're using our own technology against us," he realized. With a primitive machine we dismissed as harmless, Han's fighter was now only seconds from impact. Fracture lines had appeared across the flagship's forward section as the resonance built to critical levels. She fired her last 2 weapon bursts, directly at the weakened crystal, then pulled up sharply. The structural stress on the F-22 was catastrophic. The right wing tore away completely, and the canopy cracked as the fighter tumbled past the flagship. But Han's shots found their mark, striking the destabilized crystal at its weakest point. A blinding flash erupted as the flagship's command center shattered. Secondary explosions cascaded through the massive vessel as power conduits overloaded. The perfect coordination of the Talon fleet faltered as their command structure was disrupted. Han fought to control her disintegrating aircraft, watching pieces of the jet break away around her. The stick barely responded and smoke filled the cockpit. Emergency oxygen was all that kept her conscious as the F-22 tumbled through space. "Commander Sue," Jin's voice came through the static. "Multiple ships just entered the system. It's the Galactic Council peacekeeping force." Han smiled weakly. About time they showed up. Through her cracked canopy, she could see sleek silver ships with the distinctive blue markings of the Galactic Council closing rapidly on the disorganized Talon fleet. Ambassador Kim stood on the bridge of the lead council vessel, watching as the Talon ships began to retreat. "Lock tractor beams on that fighter," she ordered, pointing to Han's tumbling craft. "Get the pilot out now." Han was losing consciousness as her oxygen supply dwindled. The fighter's remaining wing tore away, and the fuselage began to break apart. Through blurry vision, she saw a silver council ship approaching, its tractor beam reaching out to stabilize her craft. Then darkness took her. She woke in a medical bay, the soft hum of advanced equipment around her. Ambassador Kim stood at her bedside. "Commander Han Su," the ambassador said with a warm smile. "The pilot who defeated a Talon Armada with an antique fighter jet." Han tried to sit up. "The colony. Safe," Kim assured her. "The Talon have withdrawn from this sector. Entirely. Your actions have forced the Council to reconsider our non-intervention policy." 3 months later, Han stood before the Galactic Council chamber, still walking with a slight limp from her injuries. Her dress uniform felt strange after years, in colony clothes, but the occasion demanded formality. "Your actions have demonstrated something the galaxy had forgotten," the Council leader said, voice echoing in the vast chamber. "The unique value of human intuition and courage, qualities no artificial intelligence or advanced technology can replicate." The Council voted unanimously to extend protection to all human colonies and to invite human pilots to join their peacekeeping forces. Han was offered command of a new squadron, but she declined. Instead, she returned to Nuevo Terra, where her battered F-22 had been carefully reassembled and placed in a new museum. Beside it stood a crystal shard from the Talon flagship Aisei, reminder of what one determined pilot could accomplish against impossible odds. Throughout galactic space, the legend spread. Alien academies added studies of human psychology to their military training. Ship designers incorporated unpredictability into their systems. And whenever a seemingly overwhelming force threatened peace, someone would inevitably tell the story of Han Su and her antique fighter jet. In time, human pilots became the most sought-after navigators and combat specialists in the galaxy, valued for the very qualities the Talon had dismissed: imagination, intuition, and the willingness to take risks no algorithm would ever calculate as reasonable. Han never flew in combat again, but sometimes on clear nights, she would look up at the stars and remember the dance among them, when an ancient fighter from humanity's past had proven that technology alone would never replace the human factor. The end.